Good morning, everybody. Live on a Friday, not quite 8 a.m. here on the East Coast. It's just me today on the Dev Talk Show. So this is Chris Gomez. We'll see. We'll see who joins us in a little bit. One of the things that we were doing last time is we've been talking about the Dev Talk Show website and implementing our first component, our first Razor component to be used on the site. And I think one of the things that's really got me interested is understanding the different render modes. We've talked a lot about Blazor's render modes. I think the title here says render states. That's probably an artifact of me being a little tired as I wrote the title. I'll definitely be able to fix that on YouTube a little later. So what I want to do is talk about where we're going to get today, what I think for sure, and then what I think will be kind of the exploratory part at the end. If you've watched the Dev Talk Show, you know that this is recorded live. And there's plenty of times where kind of come in knowing where we're going to get to. And then the rest is based on either viewer comments or questions. We might explore something else. And that's fine. That's something that I actually really like about the show. But what I want to make clear as we get started today is we're going to start with the current state of the Dev Talk Show website and where it is with a Razor component that all it does, it doesn't do a whole lot, is that given a video ID on YouTube, it will just render that little card. I call it the YouTube card. I don't know if that's the real term for it. It'll render that little card. And so somebody at the site could click and they could watch the video right from there, which is cool. But if you look at the site, one of the components says latest video. And right now we are plugging in the latest video. We're not asking the YouTube API, what's the latest video? And that's not really all that sustainable, because it means that every time we want to update the latest video, we're going to have to go send a pull request for the site. And that's not how you want it to work. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and try to update this component, or come up with a way that we have maybe a little bit of both. We have some cards where we say what the video is, and then maybe others we go ask the YouTube API for it. And let's see where we can get here. First thing I want to do is make sure we're all set up to go. And just a second. Make sure we've got everything going on this other machine. Oh, that's interesting. That's not what I expected at all. All right. Okay. Seems good. All right. So we're looking at the screen. We see the current site. We see just what I was talking about. Let me get my keyboard ready here. Just what I was talking about, where we have the embedded, that's a Razor component there. And it's not this, you're going to see it's not the most exciting Razor component. And then down at the bottom, latest episode. But don't forget, this latest episode is being manually input. And so what do I mean by that? If we take a look at the website, this is the home Razor page. There's a lot of HTML in here, but then there's a couple places to stop off. Here is the Razor component with the video ID just coded right in for the interview with Carl. And then further down, we have the Razor component for latest episode. And furthermore, we're saying that it should be rendered a little bit bigger, width 560, height 315. And it's just a different video ID. So that's not super helpful long-term. So what we're going to do now is, let's see here. Let's make sure that I first of all, let's make sure that I have my notes up. That will be really important. And I can show you how I've gotten from A to B with a component that will actually go and get the latest sample. So Just making sure that the notes that I have to do this are ready so that we can get moving. Okay, so where are we? This is not what I was expecting at all. Okay, good, good, good. All right, good. So first of all, we're gonna need a component, and the way I'm going to choose to do this, just for today, is I'm going to create a new component. None of this is to say that I think this is the only way to do this, or even the best way to do it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a component that actually uses the YouTube video component, because this component, it's not so special. It's not huge. Here we go. All it is just the iframe to embed a video at a certain video ID and set a width and a height if it's provided. In Blazor, if the width or height parameters are null, these attributes are not going to get rendered at all. So it is actually safe to use a nullable value here. And if it's null, Blazor does the work for you to say, oh, well, then I don't need to supply a width at all. Okay. But what we will do now is we're going to build a second component. So let's stop the app. Let me make sure we can see. And oh, Rich Ross joining us this morning. So Rich couldn't be here, as you can see, because he's driving up to New Hampshire. So as you can see, not able to join us today, but that's okay. Let's get moving. So let's hopefully have a safe trip up there, Rich. So one of the things about the Dev Talk Show is that I used the InteractiveAuto template. If you haven't seen that template before, let's just do a quick file new project so we can see it. If I do Blazor web app and click next, and then I'm just going to go ahead and say next here, it's not that important. But if I say interactivity type auto, which means that I'm asking Blazor to choose between server and WebAssembly, and interactivity location is global, then what it creates is a site that looks like this. If I go to app.razor, we're going to see that render mode has been set at a very high level for any components that are included in the head, and any components that are included in routes are set to interactive auto. And so that's going to cascade down, because if our pages are interactive auto and the components in the pages are interactive auto and we don't do any overriding, then they're all going to be interactive auto. And what that means is that Blazor tries to stream down the WebAssembly version of the page, but in order to get you a fast first load, it'll render it with server-side rendering, it'll pre-render it, it'll use interactive server for interactivity. It will do all of those things. So what I found is that you kind of have to have your component ready for that. And the first step is, if you want your component to work well in interactive auto, is we are going to want to put it in the client project. Okay, there's two projects in a Blazor WebAssembly in .NET 8 app. You've got what's kind of called the server project here. It doesn't have a special name. We created a Blazor 8 interactive auto project and called it Dev Talk Show, the devtalkshow.web. And so the template itself created this client project, and anything that we want to work well in interactive auto, we need to put in here. That way the Blazor WebAssembly side can pick it up just as well as it being pre-rendered and the like. So we're going to create a new component, and I am going to call this, let's call this latest YouTube video. Okay. So the latest YouTube video component, what I want to do is I want to get the YouTube component, and we're going to have them side by side so we can kind of take a look at what we're doing differently. First of all, let's see. First of all, what we'll do is the latest component doesn't really need any of this. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to include a YouTube video component, right? And the video ID this time is going to be, it's going to be picked up from a web call. So for now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say YouTube response. This is just some placeholder code so we can kind of think about what we want to implement. And then down here, I'm going to need Well, it's interesting that it's trying. Look at that. That's very interesting. That Copilot went ahead and tried to come up with some examples here, and I've actually kind of noticed that Copilot is both looking at code that I've already written, like it's saying, well, you've used video ID before, and this is what you set. But then I also figure you might have to go get it, so let's go call the YouTube API. Pretty actually interesting stuff. So what I'm going to do is, I think just as a placeholder, because I don't really need all that, is I'm going to go ahead and see, I don't really need it to be a parameter either, because this component itself is going to figure out the response. I'm just going to have a string here for now, but I don't really intend for this to be a string. Instead, let's imagine now that when this component wakes up, what it's going to want to do is go find what the latest YouTube video is. And it's going to do that in its initialized method. Now, maybe we can come up with a lot of good reasons why we shouldn't do this here. And that's fine. And I think, well, that's interesting. Await get latest video ID. That's certainly an idea, right? We might have to go get that, but right now we'll just leave this commented out. And there's really not a whole lot for me to do here. Even running this doesn't prove a whole lot. But what this probably has shown us, just in thinking through it, just in thinking through what's going to be required to make this happen, is we're going to need to have some code now that goes out and gets that response. So what if we want an HTTP client to go grab this? Okay, so let's go ahead and inject the HTTP client. Now in Blazor, HTTP client is a service that it's already ready to go for you to just inject. I don't really have to do a whole lot here other than go add an HTTP client on the client side. So let's see, like if I try to run this right now, I don't think it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is let's go to program CS in the client. This is in the client project. I need program CS. And here we go. So what are we going to do in here? I need an HTTP client to inject into that service. And so curious what it was going to say there. So let's do builder.services. We're going to add a client, and I'm going to add a scoped HTTP client. You're going to see why in a second. In fact, that is why. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept that code there. I am creating a service. I'm creating an HTTP client service, but I'm setting the base address. And what I'm doing is I'm using some built-in components, features of Blazor's WebAssembly host builder. The WebAssembly host builder here is only available for the WebAssembly host. If I head over to program for the server side, you're going to see that I don't have access to this. I can ask the WebAssembly host about the host environment, and I can get the base address. So when I'm working locally, that's going to be localhost something or other. And when we're out in our production state, that's going to be a different. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying I want to call back in. I want to call back into the host and ask it to go get the YouTube, make the YouTube API call. Now, why is that? Why don't I just go ahead and make the YouTube API call directly from Blazor WebAssembly? And some of you watching might have good reasons why. In fact, you know, my compiling the code isn't really going to do anything. Yes, it did build. Yes, it is showing. And yes, it is rendering the code. But we're not really using these components yet. The reason why I don't want Blazor WebAssembly to make the call out to YouTube is that for me to make this YouTube call and get the latest episodes, I have to use a YouTube API key. And so that YouTube API key is a secret, frankly. And if I do anything to call it from the Blazor WebAssembly side, then I'm basically handing my YouTube API key to anybody who uses my site and gets the auto interactive mode to bring down the WebAssembly host. So what I want to do instead is I want to create an endpoint that I can call. Now, I could, it actually doesn't help me too much to create a minimal API or an API in another project and host it separately, because the same problem exists. I mean, unless I want this call to be unauthenticated, then it's fine. But the problem here is I want this user to be able to ask the server, hey, can you go get the latest? And the server holds what I'm going to call the key to the kingdom on how to do this. All right. So what I'm going to do is, let me stop the project and let's create something for it to call. So that means in program CS on the server side, for one thing we're going to notice is that over on the client side, I was able to say builder.host environment. If I just to show you, if I try to do builder.host environment here on the server side, this doesn't work. So host environment, web application builder, which is the builder we use on the server side, does not have a definition for host environment. And there's a good reason for it. The reason is that at WebAssembly construction time, Blazor knows the, well, it's not so much Blazor. That component knows its hosting environment at that point. The application has started. But here at web application builder time, that is something that I could still set. I could have another line of code further down that says like, hey, use these URLs. So the hosting environment isn't known, and so we can't just grab it from here. That is going to be something that comes into play a little bit later. So what I'm going to do for now is I want to create a place where the WebAssembly code can call back to the server that it was hosted from and get the latest YouTube video. So I'm going to use, in the same app, I'm going to use a minimal API. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the route for this minimal API is going to be YouTube/latest. So I'm creating like this domain specific localized API that lets me, oh, how interesting about what it's trying to do here. And I'm creating like this domain specific localized minimal API that Blazor WebAssembly can call back into safely, anonymously, and then it holds the keys of the kingdom to go out to YouTube. We could have many episodes about good architecture for this, but I think what I'm driving at is what you have to think about, things you might want to think about when you're doing interactive auto mode. Now, what is this thing going to have to do? Well, I'm going to want it to make an HTTP call. So for me, the best way to do that is if I had an HTTP client factory. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in HTTP client factory here, and we'll go ahead and give it a parameter name. But I don't have an HTTP client factory ready to inject. So what that means to me is, do I need? Yes, I don't have one ready to inject here. So that means let's come up here and let's add to services. And there is a ready-made add HTTP client method. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'm just going to go ahead and use that as is. We'll leave that like that for now. All right. So now this HTTP client is going to get injected. And so I need an HTTP client. So let's create one. In fact, I love how the code just hands that to me. And then I'm not going to go ahead and say what returns yet, but that's interesting. That is this pretty much it? It's close, but it's not what I'm going to actually do. So I am going to go ahead and use the get from JSON async method. And now interesting here. The get from JSON async method is typed, and so it's basically saying, hey, what do you want this to be? So let's take a quick peek at what this looks like. So let's say it looks like this. There was no key at the end of that. If I used a typed HTTP client call, well, first of all, I'm going to need a model to hold this YouTube response. And so this is the API that I call, but what I've left off is the key. The key should really come like from a secret or something. So we'll leave that off for now, and that's okay. And then I believe, let's see, let's just get we'll get the code right here, and then we'll get it all set up. And then I believe, let's see, I need a semicolon to hang off the end of that, which I don't think it did. I hope I didn't insert a semicolon somewhere else. Okay, now, I think just to kind of get this moving, I'm going to go ahead and say return, because I got to return something, otherwise it's going to yell at me, but I don't have a YouTube response. So we need one. And what we're going to do is let's go and create a models folder. Okay. And in here, I'm going to want a new class. So easiest way for me to create a new class is just to use this. It creates the file. You don't have to do this. You can just create the file, and you can create it outside of the IDE. That's fine. And I get a simple file. Great. Now, let's see, make sure that, just making sure there weren't any questions in chat. So now, how am I going to fill this up here? Let me see if I have, let me double check if I have an example that's ready to go, because that would be really cool. Oh, I do. Cool, cool. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show everybody what I'm going to do here. I'm going to call the YouTube API on my channel. There's the channel ID. But notice what's being left off of here is the key. All right. So let me make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see it for sure. I'm going to hit enter, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because it says, hey, this request is missing a valid API key. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run curl again, except this time, I'm going to include the API key, and I'm going to do it off screen. And what we get now is we get, for the request I made, it's for the last 5 videos in order. Okay. And so what's interesting is I get all this JSON back. So just because I want to make sure I don't scroll up so far that the key is exposed, I am going to cut and paste this JSON into the IDE. Okay. So first, let me copy it. Now let me make sure that I got it. Okay, so there it is. See all that? This is all the JSON that came back in that request. But I don't need JSON. I need classes that could then be used to read that JSON from the HTTP client. So I am going to I'm going to make myself a little bit of space, and I'm going to go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste JSON as classes. So you saw that response that I got back from curl, from a valid curl response with an API key. Paste JSON and classes, and I just got a whole series of classes that now can be used to be the YouTube response that I can use in an HTTP client call, so I get a nice typed HTTP client call. Do you sometimes want to go back and edit some of this code? Sure, absolutely, that does happen. However, this is a heck of a start. So I don't need the little placeholder, and I also don't need that to be the end brace. Let me go add another end brace here. Visual Studio IDE goes ahead and moves everything over. And just to finish it off, I don't necessarily need this to be the root object. I'm going to say this is the YouTube response. Okay. Is it the best name in the world? Maybe not, because there may be more than one kind of YouTube response. Doesn't matter. I now have a model and supporting classes that I can go back here. And now all I really need to do is include using DevTalk Show Web Models. So now that gets added up at the top. And this is now ready to go. It doesn't have the key at the end, so it's going to blow up. But we'll get that fixed. That's now ready to go, pretty much to go ahead and make the call. But call's not going to work yet. And the main reason is because when that call comes back, as we're going to see, when I get the YouTube response, and please note, a lot of the code today is assuming this is going to work. This is certainly not going to be production ready. is you probably saw in the YouTube response, you may have seen, you may not have seen, is that I get this items array. So, you know, I'm asking for the last 5 videos. I guess I'll go ahead and be a little defensive here. And I'm just going to say that if the length of that returned array is greater than 0, then let's go ahead. And I mean, it probably will be, but let's go ahead and say that we want to return the response back. And I think for now, let's just do this. For now, let's say return. We're going to return an OK response. And yeah, we're going to return exactly that. We're going to go ahead and return the first item's video ID. And that's a string. Okay, that's a string that goes back that then can be consumed by the component. If that doesn't work, then I'm not going to fill out this problem. I'm not going to fill that out, but we're just going to say, hey, there was a problem. Okay, so now I have an API that it's a localized, like domain-specific API that the Blazor WebAssembly component can call back into, and then it has the secret necessary to go out and call YouTube. So let me just go ahead and build this and make sure it builds. I haven't missed anything. I haven't forgotten anything. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and very quickly add my YouTube key at the end of the code here. And if we have some time at the end, and what I'll do is secure this as like a user secret and kind of do things the right way. But I want to make sure we get through all this before we get to stand up. So that should make the call now. At least I think so. I hope I didn't. Well, we'll see. The idea was not to expose that key. I actually don't notice if I did or not. Okay. I'm going to have to think about that again anyway. I think that key will probably get deleted after the show, but that's all right. So let's see. I got to call YouTube latest from somewhere. And let's see. That's going to be me going back to the video, to the component. I'm going to want to go back to the component and implement this. So now that I'm back in the component, let's see what happens here. I have a wait key from JSON async, and I guess this happens to be a string. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do this, but let's see if we can just get it going. YouTube/latest. And so I'm basically calling back in here. I'm saying, go and get this. I got to give it some response. So let's say string. Oh, let's just say that's YouTube response. Okay. No reference assignment. I guess that's true. And the video ID is YouTube response. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add parameters for width and height so that way somebody using this latest component, they can pass along width and height. Now, there is a feature in Blazor called cascading parameters that we may want to use, but I just don't know if we'll get to that today. So just making sure that that's clear. Non-nullable property. So let's say that it could be null. And that seemed to make all of that work, or at least happier. All right. So that worked. So now let's head out. Let's head out to home.razor. Or actually, let's make a new page. Let's make a new page. So I'm going to add a Razor component. I'm going to call this component latest video. And latest video is not going to have a whole lot going on here. We'll put a page title of latest video. We'll set a page directive here. that says that if you go to /latest, you get this page. And then we need to do one more thing. We're going to need to add this to the nav menu. So in the nav menu, we're going to make one more spot for this. Say latest video is the name of the item, and we're just going to say latest. Okay, now here's the $64,000 question. Is this going to do everything that I want? And we're going to find out. So Blazor Talk Carl Franklin, Blazor Talk Carl Franklin. If I click on latest video, nothing happened. Okay, so let's figure out why. Oh, actually, I think I have some reasons why. I think I know some reasons why that didn't do anything. First of all, notice that I said, actually, I think number one reason is I didn't do anything in here. So that's the number one reason why nothing happened is because I did not add our brand new latest video component into the new component. So that's the number one reason right there why absolutely nothing happened. So let's see here. Let me stop this and let's go back, double check that I do have my latest video component is a page. Okay, good. And really, in order to do this, I don't have to do a whole lot more other than add something like this. So let's see, latest YouTube video is not the name of it. Is that not the name of it? What did I call it? I called it latest YouTube video. Okay. So latest YouTube video, that's interesting. Found markup element. Oh, found markup element with unexpected video. So the problem is it doesn't know about the namespace here. And I think there's a couple ways I could address this. One is I'm surprised that it doesn't have the components. Is this not in imports already? Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. That surprises me though, because what did we do in home? Did we actually add the component? Oh, this is it. So we have a using. So let's go over what's gone on here. In my two components that are not pages are in a folder in the client side called latest YouTube video.razor and latest YouTube video, and I'm sorry, YouTube video, and they're in the components folder. So that means in order for it to work on the home page, I added this using. Well, it turns out I don't necessarily have to have that using there. I could go to this imports _razor, which is sitting in the client project, and I can add this here to the global usings, and now it will be available to both home.razor and the latest YouTube video. It should be available to both now. Okay. So if this is intended to be a component, but I've already done that. Let's run it. Call latest video, latest episode. Still not happy. So why are you not happy? Latest YouTube video is there. I've included. Oh, wait a second. Did I put this in the wrong imports? I did. Look at that. I did it on the client side. And I meant, yes, I did it on the server side imports. So my mistake. Let's put that on the client side imports. And that takes some getting used to here in Blazor when you want your component to be WebAssembly and auto ready. Is things on the client side have to be accessible. So let me do latest video, and here it is. It came up, and look at this. The latest video happens to be the one that we're recording right now. So at least the nice thing is we know this all worked. We know that calling back to my little local domain-specific endpoint from Blazor WebAssembly, we know that that worked. We know that it rendered the very latest video, which happens to be the one that's live. And we could even write some more code to say like, well, let's not use it if it's live. Like we could do all that. But for right now, that works. So what I want to do now is I want to explore what happens. What if I wanted this latest episode to be right here on the homepage? Like, why not? Why shouldn't it just be right on the homepage? And so let's go ahead and close this. And let's go to home. Okay. And so instead of using this, where we declare what we want the YouTube video to be, I want it to be just like this page. So let's go ahead and use it. If some people are pretty good at reading me, you might understand there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. So let's go ahead and run it. Homepage tries to come up. And it blows up. It blows up. It says an unhandled exception occurred. An invalid request URI was provided. Either the request URI must be an absolute URI or base address must be set. So in calling back to our little local domain-specific minimal API, it didn't work. And it didn't work because it said, look, there's no base address. And so you might be going, well, what? I don't understand. What's going on? Why? If I just comment this, if I do nothing more than comment that line of code, and which is putting this Blazor WebAssembly component, or this Blazor auto interactive component that goes and makes a YouTube call. Look, everything works again, right? Blazor Talk with Carl Franklin works great. I click on latest video and it goes and gets the latest video. That's working fine. But if I had it on the home page, it blows up. So what is happening, right? Let's talk about what's happening. The way we're going to figure out what's happening is we will go to the minimal API. So I go back up to the server and go to program CS. You know what I did wrong there is I think I've had that in a window a lot of the time. I apologize. Definitely did not want to do that. Let's set a breakpoint here and watch what's happening, and then let's run it. Okay. So this is the version that works. Basically, that API is not getting called. Okay, I click on latest video. Now it's getting called. If I look at the client that gets created, actually, I should set the breakpoint here for next time. Well, there's the key. That's exactly what I didn't want to do. So that's all right. We'll have to get rid of that key right after the show. So let's look at the client. The client is base address null. Well, what do you mean base address null? That doesn't make any sense because that was initialized, wasn't it? Wasn't that initialized back in program CS on the client side? In fact, why don't we set a breakpoint here so we can watch it get initialized? Okay, we'll click continue and we'll run this whole thing again. Okay, so first thing that happens is the home page comes up. And then look at after the home page comes up, after it comes up and it's been rendered, then I hit this breakpoint. So that means that this base address isn't getting set in time for the home page to render. So what happens is that Razor component comes to life and it blows up saying like, I don't have a base address to use and you didn't give me enough in the URI. You gave me YouTube/latest. You didn't give me enough in the URI to deal with this. So I can't make a web call. But it works fine if I click on latest video, because at this point, what's been happening behind the scenes is the WebAssembly version of this site has been streamed down to the browser, and that's been initialized. And so I do have this sitting. This should work. That's funny that blew up on me. I'm actually a little surprised that blew up on me because we've just seen it working just fine. It could be setting the different breakpoints is the problem here. So I kind of have a problem. I have a problem with a component that works fine. It works fine as long as it's loaded, as long as I don't use it on the first page, because it has this prerequisite that isn't going to be set. It's not going to be initialized until after the site is rendered. And so that's a problem, right? And when you think about how to solve that problem, what I can tell you is that I tried to solve the problem naively by saying, well, what if I went to the client side? I have an HTTP client here. It's just that when that HTTP client runs to make this call, it's not set yet. So I naively tried to solve the problem by saying, okay, fine, I'm going to have an HTTP client that knows that it's talking on localhost. And the problem is the only way to do that is to kind of set it. And so now I've got this new problem of, well, what happens when I go to production? And am I really going to have some setting to say, well, this is where you're being hosted from? And that just seems so, frankly, kind of lame compared to how over on the WebAssembly side it just works. And so I actually posted about this. I opened a pull request. I opened an issue, and I said, hey, I'm working in InteractiveAuto, and I'm really struggling to figure out how do I have an HTTP client that's ready on the server side and have one that's ready on the client side. And I got some great help from a YouTube user, and I want to make sure they get credit. A YouTube user, a GitHub user, Mahald, if I'm saying it correctly, I don't know, kind of came through with a pull request to my own sample saying, hey, I think this is what I would do, right? What I would do is I would implement an interface and then have two different implementations. One, a service that you add on the server side. One is a service that you add on the client side, and they operate differently. You know, on the client side, I want to come back and call this endpoint. Okay, I want to call this YouTube latest endpoint, and I want to have it call YouTube. But if I'm on the server side, I don't have to do that. The whole point of it being on the server side is to protect that key, which I haven't done a good job of today during the show. But I will, I'll go ahead and delete the key, and maybe we'll, because I might run out of time in the next 25 minutes. We'll talk about how the right way to secure that was with user secrets. So, I thought it was really awesome that that it was willing to provide that sample, basically to say, here's what I think you should be doing. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to do this. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have to create an interface. And I think just for today, to keep things simple, we'll create the interface kind of the way that he did in his sample. We'll just go create it on the client side. Since the client side project is included on the server side, we'll go ahead and include that project. What you may really want to do is have a third project with shared stuff like this. So let's make this a case of getting it working and not so much about like, this is absolutely the best way to do it. So what I'm going to do is let's create another folder here. And I'm going to call it services. Okay. And in the services folder, we're going to have, let's see, I'm going to say add class, but what I really want is an interface. And let's call this the I latest. And again, this might seem very specific. Maybe I want a more generic version of this. But I'm going to say I latest YouTube video service. All right. Wow, that's a mouthful, but that's okay. And in the I latest YouTube video service, I don't think we need a whole lot here. How about that right there? That seems pretty good. Thanks for the suggestion. This is just going to be an async call that returns a string and it has the latest video ID. That's just all it's going to be. So that's a great suggestion. I appreciate that, Copilot. And now I need to actually implement the version of this that's going to live on the client side. So I'm still in the client project, and I'm going to say latest. I accidentally hit caps lock. If anybody knows how to permanently disable the caps lock key, I've tried looking for ways to do that. And I'm going to say this is the WASM version, meaning it's the client version. Okay. And this particular client version, let's see, what are some of the things we need? First of all, I need a constructor just like that. I appreciate that suggestion. And it's going to take an injected HTTP client. So let's create one of those. I guess I don't really care what that's called particularly. And then I've got to implement the interface. And I'm going to actually be, oh, you know what I didn't do here is I didn't say but now it's figured it out. That's what it's derived from, and I'm going to have to, let's go ahead and implement the interface. Great. Perfect. That's awesome. I love that it did all that for me. So I've implemented the interface, and this thing is going to go ahead and turn around and make the call that I want, right? So let's say, what did I have to do? Let me go back to the server, to the version that I already have, because what I had to do is I had to do this. I had to await. Okay. This is what I want. I want to await call, except that now instead of using that name, it's using HTTP client. And I want to return what comes back from that. Okay. What's it complaining about here? Oh, probably the number one thing it's complaining about is that I didn't make this an async method. And let's see. I have the class deriving off of it. It's interesting that the get method is saying, well, I don't have access to this. What I'm trying to figure out is the reason because I need, I think I know why. I think I know why. So it's really interesting. In the sample, this was implemented this way. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, I see what the problem is here. Problem is that instead of having a separate constructor, this is using, so the sample that he gave me uses a newer feature, right? Basically saying, let's have a default constructor. And the default constructor goes ahead and says, all right, well, I'm going to create this parameter, and then this parameter is going to be here, and that's fine, I guess. Okay. Possible null reference returned. I guess that's entirely possible, but I don't know that that's a big deal. Or we could always say string.empty if it doesn't work, and now it's not going to complain about that anymore. Okay, so on the web side, it is now going to do this. We could argue about whether this is the way we want this code to work. Interesting that for some reason it wanted this is using directories indirect necessary, and this using directives unnecessary. These are the only ones we really need. So let's see if this builds. If it builds, I'm going to have to go back and use this instead. We're going to have to go get it injected and use this. Okay, so now we go back to our latest YouTube component. Now, our latest YouTube component, it's still set up to use HTTP, but it can't possibly use the new service yet. All right. So what we're going to have to do is we have to add this to the client side on the in programs. So I need program client side, and instead of what you see here, I think this is really kind of the big thing. Is instead of what you see here, where I have like a scoped, I have this like scoped version. I don't really want that anymore. I mean, I guess it's fine to leave it. I don't think it really does anything anymore. I might experiment with taking it out and say builder.services. We're going to add a new scoped service. Okay. And this one is, whoops. It's an latest. Well, it actually seems to know it's the latest YouTube video service, and I want, yeah. So when in the client project, when I ask for latest YouTube video service, I want the WASM implementation, which is what we just did. I'm not actually even sure that this is necessary anymore. I'm just not sure that it is. It's going to be, let me think for a second. It's going to be injected for me. I think, yes. So I don't know that there's any more to do other than comment that out, go back to the latest YouTube video component, comment that out because I don't think it's necessary. Oh, that's not how you comment things out. Let's just get rid of it. And there's a build error here. Okay. Oh, that's because I haven't fixed the code in here yet. All right. So this is the component. And in the component, I am going to need a couple things. I need to inject. See, I don't want HTTP client. I want an web scraper service. But the problem is when I ask for an web scraper service, it's not going to know about it. So let's put in a using. I need to use that feature. So in services, I need this. I need the dev talk show web client services. And I need it in my component. Okay, good. And then I need to inject an web. Gosh, I was really hoping that it would do it. Latest. Yeah, there it is. latest YouTube video service. And I'm going to call it latest video service. I'm just going to do that. Now that I've injected that, I can use it down here. And the method is not called get from JSON async anymore. The method is just called get latest video ID. And I don't even think it takes any parameters. And that's it. I get a YouTube response that's a string, and it should pop that in there. Okay, now are we ready to build? Yes, great. Let's go take a look at the homepage again. I still have latest YouTube video commented out because notice that all I've done now, I've only implemented the client side of this. I've implemented a client side version. So I really haven't done a whole lot when you think about it, not a whole lot by comparison. When I say latest video and click on that, it does say an error occurred. Oh, what a bummer. Because I was hoping that that would work okay. Let's go figure this out real quick. Or at least try to. Let's see if this is getting called, first of all. Are we getting to this? Oh, I think I know what some of the problems is. I think I know one of the problems is that I didn't change. Do I need to change? I do. I still need to change it on the client side. No, I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to. Let's go see. Okay, so everything's fine when I click latest video and it just blows right up. So we're going to have to get a better handle on what's going on. Okay. Let's run it again. Down to the last 10 minutes here. Okay, so the first page works fine. Click on latest video. And it doesn't even let me move to it. Well, that's even worse than I thought. So what's the problem here? I don't know that I have a problem. Let's see, get latest video ID doesn't even work. Get latest YouTube ID, video service ID doesn't even work. I don't think I need this, but maybe I'm wrong. Because there has to be some HTTP client for this video service to use. Yes. Yes. That's the problem. So now when we run latest video, okay, so that was the problem is now the YouTube component, the latest video YouTube component wants to call this service, which I'm going to go ahead and F11 into. It has an HTTP client ready to go. Oh, it says it's null. So that is going to be happy. What did I get? Oh, I did get the video. Interesting. But see, it's not thrilled about that. It says it's waiting for locals. Well, it came up. I still think a little bit. I think I'm having some trouble with pre-rendering there. I think pre-rendering the component is why it was null the first time, and then it ran again the second time, and it worked fine. So part of the problem is I haven't cured this issue on the server side yet. And what I didn't get to and may not be able to get to in the next few minutes is that even when you have interactive auto mode on, pre-rendering still takes place. And you can turn that off. I don't know if I'm going to get that turned off in the next few minutes, but and I'm not saying that you should turn it off. I'm just saying that in this case, that kind of doubling of like, oh my gosh, it's doing it twice. That might seem a little weird. And I totally understand that. That doesn't, that might be something that you don't necessarily want. So let's go to the server side now where we have to implement this. And let's say I want a services folder here too. And the services folder on this side is going to need a new class. And what did I call it on this side? I called it latest YouTube video service. So I'm gonna stick with that name, latest video YouTube service server. Okay. And what does it do? Well, first it's going to implement the latest YouTube video service, but and it automatically added that using for me. Well, that's cool. And then let's say I think it's going to say, I'll implement the interface for you. Great. That's awesome. Appreciate that it did that. This particular, we'll use the same technique again, except this time, and you'll see why in a moment, I'm not going to accept an HTTP client that's ready-made. I'm going to use the HTTP client factory. And what's nice about this is you can see that this allows you to have different implementations based on like what's going on. Maybe your particular task is not necessarily to do HTTP calls. You might want to do some other form of interactivity, but it's different when it's called from the server than when it's called from the client. Maybe it's just different. And so that's okay. You can have different implementations. And that was really the revelation that I will say Mahal did for me that was really great, is just making me stop and think. I'm not necessarily after an HTTP client that works on both. What I'm after is implementations that are ready for each side. And, it's funny to be, in a way, it's a little humbling to be like, oh, of course, like, why didn't I think of that? But that's all right. That's why we work together in the community. Oh, in fact, yeah. Okay. So here's the deal. When calling on the server side, I don't necessarily have to call YouTube latest. I could actually call the final code if I wanted to, and that makes things a little bit easier, because the mistake that I make in calling back into the home service is that the home service doesn't, the server side doesn't know its own base address, and therefore this call doesn't work, right? So instead, what you can do, or what I can do, is I can come over here and I can basically re-implement. So let's go to program CS, and let's have the implementation be here. Okay, there's that key again that I did not want out there, but that's all right. Too late now. Let's have the implementation be here. Okay. So we're going to say that the YouTube response, oh yeah, of course the method's not async. Let's get that fixed. The YouTube response is going to be called from within the server side implementation. All right. And then what else did I do? Yeah, it's copying the code from last time, which is fine. And that's it. I suppose if this doesn't work because we have to return something, and again, we can think through how to do this better in the future. I probably wouldn't want to return a string in the future. I think I'd probably want to return like a result-oriented thing. So YouTube response might be null here. I suppose that's true, but I don't know that I'm going to worry about it for now. So this is the new implementation. We're on the server side. On the server side service, we actually go and make the call. Okay. That worked. Now I have to change the program CS on the server side. Okay, so here we are back in program CS. We know it's program CS because we see the whole website being created. I don't need to do all this here anymore because I now have a service that knows how to do this, right? So instead of having this injected, let's have a latest YouTube video service injected. Let's just call it latest YouTube videos, fine with me. I don't really need like pretty much all of this code, right? Let's just say what we're going to do is we're just going to get a response and we're going to call latest YouTube video, get latest video ID. That's it. That's all of that. That's the whole thing, except that I suppose that we'll want to await that. And now we will say, since we're returning empty right now, we're returning empty if the response came back null or didn't work, like if the whole call didn't work. Probably not the best response. We'll have to work on that a little bit. Then we're going to say, I'm going to say results.problem. So that, whoops, return results.problem. This is kind of inverting the order of operations here. It's first we find out if there was a problem with the call. And if not, then we return the call. All right. And I don't even need all this anymore because this was all picked out for me. Let me double check that that's true. Yes, it picks it out. That's great. So now, when the client side calls back, to our little domain-specific minimal API, it uses the same exact service that the server side is going to use. I mean, they're both calling back in here, but the nice thing is that since the server-side service just knows how to make the call, I don't have that problem anymore of like, oh, well, you know, I don't know how to call back in here. I don't know what to do. This should be fine. And so instead, what we do, and the key is that the Razor component is calling this service. On the client side, the service calls here. On the server side, the service calls, it knows immediately to just go ahead and call out. I hope that's not too confusing for the last 3 minutes. A diagram would have been really nice there, wouldn't it? We still need to, there's one thing we still need to do. We need to have this service ready to go. I no longer need, I think I still need an HTTP client for another reason, but I'm going to go ahead and say builder.services. And look, it's just giving it to me, except I don't want the WASM version. I want the server version, right? And the server version, is it not called? It is called this. I didn't think there was a using that I needed. What did I do with that latest server version? Did I accidentally, I put it on the website. Oh, I think this is the problem. I think program doesn't have using dot. Yeah. No? What did I do wrong here? Latest video YouTube service server. Where is this file? What did I do? Did I put this on the wrong side? No, it's here. YouTube service server. This is the namespace. That's fine. Why can't I inject this? No, I shouldn't have to do this. I want to add an iLatest YouTube video service, and I want it to be of type latest. Oh, maybe that's the problem. Yeah, I have a feeling that this was latest video YouTube server, and so I think Copilot failed me a little bit there. All right, now let's see, 8:59. Let's see how we've done. Okay, number one, first and foremost, does latest video still work? And the answer is, well, it's making the call out. The answer is yes. Still works on this latest video page. But remember, the whole reason for doing this is that I couldn't get this to work on the home page because the home page didn't have WebAssembly activated yet. So let's head over to the home page. This was the whole point of this now. So here we go. This is the trick. This is the whole did it work? And then we'll talk a little bit about the solution. It's the latest version. What are you stuck on? Oh, no, it's stuck on something. No? Came up. Is it the YouTube API that's taking its time? No, we have our latest episode and our episode replay appearing on the home page. And then, of course, I can go to this second page, and I think it's going to pop up here as well. So here's the summary. The summary of all this is that when you choose to use interactive auto mode, which is what I'm really exploring here, I really want to explore interactive auto mode. And what I'm learning is that you build your components in the client app, the ones that are going to be using interactive auto. And then you have to start asking yourself some questions about, do they need to operate differently, whether they work on client side WebAssembly or whether they work on server side? My answer was yes. The reason why I want them to operate differently is because I want the Blazor WebAssembly side not to make the direct call to YouTube because of that whole API key that you saw. I want that to be a server-side secret. So I want the WebAssembly side to call back into the server and say, hey, go get the latest video for me. But on the server side, you're already server side. So I don't need it to do that double hopping that I was trying to get it to do, where it basically called back into itself into the minimal API that I created for it, the kind of the domain specific one, and then have it go call out. I didn't need to take that second step. So instead, by moving the step of calling the YouTube API to a service, by moving it to a service, which is what we've done here, first create an interface, and then have the server side service that knows how to call YouTube and get the latest video. Once you do that, which frankly, I should have done the implementation in the reverse order, but because we came across the bug in this order, that's why I did it in the client then server order. But first get it working on the server. Give yourself a server-based service that your client side app can take advantage of. And then that minimal API, that's like I'm calling it a domain specific minimal API. The client side calls into that. I'm on the server, so let me go ahead and use the server-based service. I can give you back your answer safely. This technique can also be used for other things that are authenticated, that you require authentication for. Because I'm not going to be able to show the videos, but maybe I'll put them in the description. There's quite a bit of work that folks like Dominic Bear have done showing how SPA-based apps that make direct web service calls, we have a very hard time protecting them. It just takes one cross-site scripting vulnerability and somebody can start digging through. You're looking for your refresh tokens, looking for your access tokens. And instead, a strict HTTPS cookie-based model kind of protects us from that. So even though client-side frameworks like Blazor, WebAssembly, and so on, they're awesome, I think a lot more now about how I kind of want a back end for the front end so that the WebAssembly side calls back into the server to have it do that sensitive work. And in the future, I would like that to be an authenticated callback into the server. This was all anonymized because I don't really care about getting the latest video. The only thing that I wanted to do was protect the key. And as you saw, as while streaming here, I failed miserably at protecting that key. So, people watching this video in the future on YouTube are going to see that key isn't there. So that's it. That's it for today. I know we went a few minutes over, a little rough. But what I wanted to do that was different is I wanted to actually show the thought process that goes from I'm working in InteractiveAuto, which was the Blazor United term. That's where that term came from back in Steve Sanderson's video from earlier this year. Is I want Blazor to choose the SignalR circuit when it makes sense. I want it to choose the WebAssembly circuit when it makes sense. But now I have to have code that's ready for that. And it takes just a little bit more thinking. And not every interactive component has this issue. Plenty of interactive components are just going to be client interactivity, and it's not going to necessarily have to worry about callbacks. And in fact, if you have been paying attention to render modes, you might say to yourself, why are you hurting yourself with render state at all, with interactivity at all? Static rendering with the stream rendering on would take care of this. And that's true. So this means when we build our Blazor websites now, I think the one-size-fits-all approach may not always be the best. You may want to have the default of global interactivity or not. But then you may want to choose component by component. This component doesn't need client interactivity. I could come back and turn off client interactivity for this component and let it be a server rendered sorry, let me try that again. A server side rendered with stream rendering on component, and the experience would be fantastic. So, but really this was kind of a way to explore InteractiveAuto, because I think it's a render mode that's going to cause a lot of interest. People are going to say, well, yeah, I want it to work everywhere. But the conclusion I'm coming to is understand what you're opting into when you opt into InteractiveAuto or interactive WebAssembly or interactive server, and ask yourself, does this component actually need client interactivity? Or is it the kind of thing that I render once and I'm done? It's just that there's a fetch involved. And so in the past, I always thought of that as like, let's get the code out there. Let's get the HTML down. Let's get the bits down. Let's make the fetch call, and then let's update the DOM. And that's how we used to work. Now with stream rendering, we have the possibility to say, well, wait a second. I am kind of this one-time fetch, so I don't necessarily know that I need client interactivity. Anyways, that's it. We're definitely past stand-up. Hopefully you enjoyed today's show, and hopefully for people watching, I just wanted to be at the top more clear about what was definitely going to get done and what is exploration, because I think nobody on the Dev Talk show wants to waste your time, and I think that's something I'm going to try to do. We're all going to try to do a little bit more, is to say, like, here's where we know we're going to get to, and then we're also going to ask your questions. We're going to try the things that you want to try live, and then even experiment with the things that we talk about together. So hopefully you had a great time today. And if you did, please comment in the comment section on YouTube. Let us know by hitting the like button. Subscribe to the channel would be sweet. What else do you want us to talk about? What do you want to explore together? This is definitely a conversation. And until next time, hopefully, go grab a cup of coffee, and hope you enjoy your morning stand-up. And we'll see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.